Sanibonani nonke, and welcome to today's Poetry Africa seminar. I am here today with wonderful women who are in the arts, not just the poetry space, but expand to other mediums as well. And we are speaking on the topic, She's My Sister. And this is, of course, self-explanatory. We as women have such strong voices, and it's time that we continue to be heard and that we step into our power, into our voices, and bring to light all the things that we need to speak about as human beings in women's bodies. So I would love to welcome Miriam Cano from Catalonia, Siphokazi Jonas from South Africa, and Malika Ndlovu from South Africa as well. First, Miriam Cano from Catalonia. She is a Catalan writer and journalist. She has published 3 poetry books, one of which was awarded the Marty Dot Poetry Prize. She has also published narrative work, the short story La Comuna de Paris, in the jointly authored book Cremen Kells in 2018. Miriam has translated into Catalan work by authors such as Emily Dickinson, Albert Camus, Sandra Cisneros, and Maggie Nelson. She has combined her literary activity with her job as a cultural journalist in Catalan media and publications. She is the co-director of the Literature and Thought School Escola Bloom, based in Barcelona, where she also teaches prose, poetry, and reading seminars. Miriam is also the co-editor of the literary magazine Carn de Cap. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Miriam Cano. Welcome to Poetry Africa. If you could please tell us just a little bit about your part of your work that you feel resonates in particular with the topic that we have at hand today in creating community amongst women, and let the audience know a little something more than what I can say in my short bio description of you. Please let us know.
Wait. Well, when I was thinking of things to explain today about sisterhood, I started thinking not only about journalism or activism or things that are included in the topic more generally, but also about translation, because I am a translator. And for example, when I was in South Africa 3 years ago, I met Lebo Mashile, and I met also Rafif Ziada, who was in the same edition of Poetry Africa. And after meeting them, I translated their work. And after translating them, our relationship, in a way, has been sealed by something which escapes activism, or we are engaged by words, and I am engaged to them by their work. It also happened to me when I translated Sandra Cisneros in her book, The House on Mango Street, which is a classic. She talks about women, about difficult, their difficult lives, the fact that they lived in a neighborhood which was full of migrant people in the United States. Luets by Maggie Nelson, and I was translating her, and she talked to me about her broken, about her heartbreaking, her obsessions. So in a way, not only sharing poetry, words, and support is but also translating other women is, for me, one of the most important things I've done in the past few years.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's lovely to have you here today. Next, I'd like to welcome Malika Ndlovu. Malika's words feature on pages and stages across South Africa and globally. contributing specifically to South African arts, culture, and poetry for over 25 years, and having published 2 plays, 5 poetry collections, and curated numerous events. This transdisciplinary artist thrives on collaboration. As a founder member of the Cape Town-based women's writers collective Weave, she co-edited Weave's Ink at Boiling Point, a selection of 21st century Black women's writing from the southern tip of Africa. Consistently promoting healing through creativity, she is also a member of the Arts in Psychosocial Support National Network of Practitioners. She features prominently in Our Words, Our Worlds, writing on Black South African women poets, 2000 to 2018, edited by Umama Nkosazana Xaba. And Malika's next book, Grief Seed, will be published early in 2022. We look forward to that. Welcome to the stage, Malika.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu. Yo, Khwezi, it is so beautiful to be talking to you because I am essentially, your mama is my sister.
Yes, mama. Hence why I'm saying mama.
And there, of course, there's also this blessing that my last born son is also Khwezi. So I'm just feeling a lot of sparkling, things going on around me on a cosmic level, just about our connectivity and our lives. And as I was listening to Miriam, I was also thinking about how the destiny of meeting each other in different spaces creates these connections that are beyond what is perceived as the initial connection point. So if I think about the many years, for example, of being involved with Poetry Africa, the relationships that sprung from that, the creative collaborations, the partnerships, the kind of mentoring and support. And I think of mentorship as a two-way learning space, much like parenting. I'm very much in school for life, till I die. And and I also feel the sense of abundance. I'm sitting here with Siphokazi, and earlier this year, we also collaborated on Time of the Writer towards poets speaking around human rights issues. And this is a beautiful intersection also that echoes with this conversation, in the sense that for me, women being woman is a multiplicity in itself. The masculine and the feminine reside here, and we literally have the capacity to create or, to merge both in our bodies. And I consider mothering to be a vital part of that, but at the same time, I'm also very resistant to anyone defining our womanness or our femininity by virtue of whether we've procreated kids. And what I mostly am trying to say is just that there's a complexity to us, our ways of being. And part of where our harm comes from is the sense that we are expected to conform or confine to only certain ways of being or spaces that we can speak into. And yet there is always an unspoken liberation and understanding when I'm in the company of women. It's a language that is actually beyond words. If you start in a new language, you're learning the ABC, the greetings of Gunjani and all of it at that base level. But when you come into a room of women, you are already, by virtue of the world we're living in and patriarchal impact, that we are already speaking at PhD level in terms of collective experience. And I feel never that I'm speaking alone if I'm mentioning this word or I'm talking about sisterhood. It's not a concept. It's not an intangible thing. It's what keeps me growing and becoming more of who I am as authentically as possible. Because sisterhood is also a place of mirror, a very important circle of feedback that reminds me to anchor myself in my truth. It's a safe space, and there are not a lot of those right now.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mama. As a collective, we are all nodding fervently while you speak. So yeah, there's an unspoken thread in each of us that definitely resonates. So thank you. Next, I'd like to welcome Siphokazi Jonas, who is a poet, playwright, performer, and producer. She holds an MA in English literature as well as an undergraduate degree in drama and English. As writer and performer, Siphokazi has produced 4 one-woman poetry shows in Cape Town and Johannesburg. Her most recent production, #We Are Dying Here, was performed at Artscape Theatre and Joburg Theatre to a positive reception. The production was adapted into a short film and is screened at numerous international festivals, including Female Filmmakers Festival in Berlin, and it has just recently won Best Short and Female for Change Award. We're so proud of you. She made history in 2016 as the first African poet ever to perform at Rhetoric in Los Angeles, California. In 2016, she was the runner-up for the Sol Blaikie European Union Award. Her work engages questions of faith, identity, gender-based violence, cultural and linguistic alienation, Black women in rural spaces, and the politics of everyday lives. Welcome today, Siphokazi.
Hi, Khwezi. Thank you so much for having me. It's just beautiful to share this space, and I think what Malika said about that intrinsic understanding of shared experience is so important, because it means we don't have to translate ourselves as much when we walk into a room. And I think that feeling, we drop that guard. At least that's been my experience, that if I walk into a room and it's a group of women, I drop my guard. And it's liberating. Interestingly, I believe I sit here partly because of the sisterhood of people like Sis Malika, who won't remember. I think the first time I met her was at Iziko Museums. It was a very long time ago, but there was an exhibition and she was guiding. There was sort of a tour through the museum, and then she performed. And it has been interesting and important to grow up within poetry, having people like her in the space, because for me, it allowed me to, even though I was, very connected to the spoken word and slam space, which when I was coming up within the scene was, very, you had the Saul Williams and the Black Isis, and kind of had those men and that kind of energy. And so you emulate it, obviously, as you're growing and you're trying to find your own voice. But having Sis Malika in particular as that figure for me in Cape Town was really important to say, hey, be you, bring all of the complexity and the nuance of your voice into the space. It's not about emulating what's happening over there. And I remember I once had her in when I was still teaching at UCT, one of the sessions that she came in and she brought in her rain stick. Again, I don't know if she remembers, which rain stick, and had created space, created the session. And so I'm a product of sisterhood myself, and the way in which I try to pay that forward or to share is in the work that I do is by witnessing through the stories that we tell, and then creating space. Because a lot of our productions that we've done often lead to conversations. I remember posting some years ago or whenever, but I remember saying, whenever I stage a show, there's at least an hour-long conversation that happens afterwards. Whether people are, there's little groups of people gathering in the lobby or in the theater, we often have to be chased out and it's unpacking. It's unpacking what's just happened. And I love that almost more than what happens on stage. It just creates a space where we can have conversation, where we can be together and feel and not be afraid to feel what we've just felt. So it's creating those spaces that we don't always have, because the conversations you can't have when you're at work, when you're at school or wherever. And so in the work that we're creating, that's important. And finally, I would say, for me, it's been really key to be involved in the process of creation from a directing and producing perspective. because it really allows us to have control of our narrative. Sometimes you can come in with a script, or you can come in with an idea, and then because of whoever is going to produce it, whoever is going to broadcast, it completely changes your intention and what you wanted to do in the world. But the more I'm involved in producing and directing, it means we can control and we can have oversight of our story, and that allows us hopefully to keep the integrity of our voices as we put them out into the world. And that's something I'd love to see more of. More producers, more directors, more showrunners. And because we see the difference when the you know, I'm thinking of Portia Gumeda, for example, who's done Housekeepers in some of these key South African shows, and just having a woman as a showrunner makes a difference in how a character is written, how it's played, you know, how it's portrayed, and it makes us just three-dimensional.
Yeah, so many important points are already being raised, some of which I was going to touch on later, and beautiful way to begin the whole discussion. And definitely, we need more directors, we need more producers, we need more all kinds of women in these spaces. There's been such an absence for so long. So it's lovely to see more and more people entering those spaces and having the older generation of women that is going, we're here, we've got you, you've got this, right? If we're doing this stuff now, you can do it even earlier because we've now paved the way for you. And that's a beautiful thing to also witness. So I guess that's a perfect way to segue into the next part, which we've already begun. But I'm curious to know, in the different stages in our lives that we enter, I mean, we've said we find mothers and daughters and grandmothers and sisters and all kinds of beautiful relationships in within our artistic space. And each phase of life that you enter, from the time when you first start learning, and all of a sudden you're asked to run a workshop or something like that, and then you start being the one who's also passing on the little that you know, and then the older you get, the more you become the mother figure, and then these umbrellas just grow and grow, and the trees have different canopy levels, and it just becomes this beautiful kind of, growth into the sky. And I'm fascinated to know, I'll begin with Miriam. How has your journey been in that sense, as I suppose in the stage of your life now where you are passing on, and how does that feel to enter that space as well? Because we change, we're not the same person throughout our entire lives. And so I'm curious to know about that for you and your journey.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to all the women that have helped me through my career, especially when they have told me about the difficulties I will have to pass through just for being a woman. No? Your writing will be less important. Your writing will be easily judged. Your physical appearance will be judged instead of your writing. So now I'm 40. I have been writing and performing for 10 years, more or less. And what I have decided to pass through the next generation of poets, of women poets, it's just the same. Be careful, be brave, be strong. Don't let them tell you what if your writing is good or is not good. Try to surround yourself with other women writers. Ask them questions, and above all, don't compete with other women, because we have been taught that women we need to compete between us. We need to compete for men. We need to compete for jobs, and suddenly we also have to compete in writing. And writing, as I have said, is more engaging than excluding. And for me, the most important thing to pass to the next generation is do your thing, be sure about your thing, and be brave to show what are you writing. Be generous to other writers, and don't compete, especially with other women.
Thank you. You say something very important there. I was having that discussion literally yesterday about sometimes you come into a space and you think, oh, I'm safe. What Siphokazi was saying about you put your guard down. And next thing you're at each other's throats as women because we're told that no, only one person can have the position, so fight for it, right? And that's a scary space to be in. So I do hope that we find tenderness in the way that we see each other. Even you don't have to love everybody. You don't have to, but you can be tender. You can hold each other with gentleness, right? Strength can be gentle. Malika, coming to you, the same question.
I think what I'm witnessing, I'm 50. And I think that what I'm witnessing in myself over time is a kind of process. I loved what you said, Khwezi, about the canopy, thinking about this ecology, a very natural and inclusive, besides the Mother Earth, kind of cliche, but there's really what I loved about what you're saying is that there's all generations alive at the same time in a forest. And there's death and life simultaneously in a forest. And all of it has its place. All of it has its moment in the sun. And all of it serves in a communal, definitely non-competitive, symbiotic, you can have parasitic relationships. Okay, you need to understand what codependence is about. And how relationships can get toxic, even all kinds of relationships. But mostly the sense that if you're doing, as Siphokazi was saying, really just owning your own skin, then it's as unique as your thumbprint, and there is no replicable version of you. And that beautiful emulation of your role models or the people you aspire to is great in your early stages. In fact, it's kind of like how you dip into the water, and then when you're in there, the thing that's already happening, coming up for air and saying, and who am I amidst all of this? And I am because of what's come before, but I am not a replication. It's not a production line. You did not come to this planet to be an echo of Lebo Mashile or Malika Ndlovu or Gcina Mhlophe. They are fulfilling their pathways, and they remain incredible lights and beacons for us. And they are constantly also, as you said, evolving. So what's happening for me is that I landed in places really young, being sometimes only the only person of color, sometimes the only female, and then definitely of mixed descent. I was now really on the periphery. And that became even the title of my debut poetry collection, Born in Africa. But, because the but is where it gets more complex then, yay! Just because you're born here, you're African and you belong. Hell, unfortunately, no. So what I want to say is that getting to this point in my life, obviously I've had expansive experiences in 22 countries. I've traveled only on a ticket that my art got for me. And for me, that's a quiet miracle, after all the anxiety of this unpredictable income practice and this defiant, no, I will not get a 9-to-5, I will not be a saleswoman. Not because there's any disrespect in those parts, but it's not the animal I am. And I got ill doing those things for short periods of absolute terror that I couldn't look after my kids, So some of those things start happening over time. It feels like a kind of morphing or composting, where you've embraced those difficult experiences, you've taken what's useful, it's refined and strengthened your sense of purpose, direction, individuality. And I found, ironically, like we can see the mirror of ourselves in each other, that I've been doing the same thing all along. What I was saying when I was 10, like, what's the problem with difference? It's beautiful. Things like, what's wrong with these people? Can't they see an opportunity to speak about this grief? And then it won't suffocate us all and make grandpa sick or uncle start drinking. These things I was asking when I was 10, and I'm still asking these questions through my poems. Why not? And it's, but there is a kind of settling into the soil in the sense that I feel I'm becoming even more of a listener. I wrote even long ago that for me, writing is a listening art. And the quality of that listening is definitely deepening. through loss, through change, through growth, through witnessing the changes in my own life, all the skin shedding, even though I was the same essence in the beginning, I've had to lose a lot in order to crystallize what it is that I'm here to do. And I'm still in this work, deep in this work. And it's not easy. But I'm also now in the company of sisters who have been doing this also. You know, Mam Cindy with Magona, yo. And then I'm in the face of comets like Koleka Putuma, yo. You know what I mean? I'm in this expanse where I can both see who was before me and who is coming up. And I get so excited. Busisiwe Masangu, yo. I just feel so, there's a deep harvest, a sense of harvest, that all that we've been through, all the things we tried to make happen, all the things that remain invisible, even though we did them long ago, that are not in archives, are not in curriculum. This is what it's been for. I really want to cry when I think about it, because we are living in a time where it's almost impossible to do that kind of accounting and connecting of what we tried to build. It's not gone, it's not lost, it cannot be lost because it's living through other people. So thank you for this opportunity to speak to those things. Thank you.
Thank you. And all of that is living through other people. Umuntu ngabantu, it's literally what we are trying to say, and people trivialize those words and just catchphrase. It's not, that's literally what we're doing. We're listening to what is being said, we're also listening to the things that are not being said, and we're going, that silence is a bit too quiet. What do I do with that? How do I enter that silence? How do I make that silence become the thing that I need? I'm already saying, how do I say them sound like this voice, right? And also in a space where often, I think, when you hear woman writer, like first woman this or first woman that, and it stops being first writer to do such and such a thing, you're expected to be talking about the same subject matters, about the same this, or that's how tropes begin, like the fiery Latina, or the angry Black woman, or these, or these, or these. And people kind of forget that we are human beings within a woman's body, right? Within a mother's body, within a daughter's body, within a businesswoman's body, within a student's body, within a Mama Wekaya. We are all of these different women and people and human beings within those people. So I'm curious to know how your experience is coming into that space and how you pick your mediums to translate all of these kinds of things and say what you need to say your experience rather than what people want you to say.
So I'm 35 and turning 36 in a few months. And I guess I would say there's a kind of in-betweenness of moving out of, definitely away from the 20s and trying to figure everything out and realizing how little I know about anything. I realize I still know very little about most things. So, I think that lifelong learning is important. But it's been interesting because I didn't realize I was leaving that phase until I started having more and more younger poets reaching out to say, can you advise? What do I do? And it's really amazing when, it's a first or second year student at AFDA who's trying to figure out, the career, and it's a high school child here. So I guess I feel like I have something to give to them. But I let them know it's not the full picture. I don't know everything. I can only share what I already have. But I'm still suckling from those who are ahead, who have been doing this for much longer than I have been, who have that experience. So it's that almost in the gap, sort of giving on this side and still receiving on this side. And that's a beautiful place to be in. And it's something that I never want to lose, And also on the other side of it is that despite being there, if there's one thing I have, it's energy. Life for me is exciting and I want to live as much of it as possible. I want to try everything. So, and I think, to be honest, because I don't, and I think, you know, sometimes I'm aware of that in my own social positioning. You know, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't own a home at the moment. You know, I'm still, so I have that ease of movement. So my sense of roots right now is not I don't mind roots, or like I don't care for roots right now. I'm happy if someone's like, okay, hey kid, do you want to come live here for a year? I'm like, I'm packed, when do we leave? But I found that it's the way in which it positions me, because, you know, mama back home, the mothers at church and your aunts and your grandmothers, like, you know, when are you settling down? Those conversations, when are you settling down? When are you having kids or whatnot? Interest, for some reason, I think being an artist, I've not been subject to those kinds of questions. I'm still crossing fingers they never come, but it's this expectation of what my role is within society, right? And so there's a way in which I'm feeling this now at 35, that there's a freedom for me, certainly, that being an artist and creating my own life, there's kind of freedom that I've been very privileged to have there, because of also how I use my voice. And so it's this in-betweenness. It's still figuring out. It's pushing to you know, when you mention the kinds of things that we maybe write about, I think I love writing about the domestic space. I love writing about you know, my grandmother, my mother, my aunts. You know, these are characters that reappear in my work frequently. But there are two things that have happened perhaps over the last year, where I'm realizing that our parents, our foremothers, really had a language for things, and that language doesn't mean they were ignorant. So let me explain. For example, mental health. There's a way in which we speak about mental health now and its prominence within public discourse that makes it seem almost new or more frequent. Like there's a sense of, but you know, your grandmothers were not going through this. They could bear an abusive man. They could do this. It's fine. But I've been on a journey of kind of saying, you know what, that's not true. There was a language for it. And now it's about discovering, how did they you know, what was happening when your aunts and your mom get together and they, you know, and they're venting, and that's their way of trying to, you know, debrief and figure out their lives. You know, if you've heard an older woman at church subbing someone, you're like, wow. Those are the kind of public proclamations that are very different to me, you know, posting on Twitter that, yo, you know, I need my mental health, I need downtime. I'm not so I'm becoming a lot more interested in the kind of language that exists for things that we've just renamed and are experiencing in a different way. And the last thing I would say is I find that I'm caring less about what I'm supposed to say. I think when I was younger, you know, there's the writing, like, within the space, this is what you should be saying, and often very cerebral. Now I've moved to a place where I think We're Dying Here was probably the first production where I just did not care. I didn't care who watched it. I didn't care who was, we needed to get our fear and our trauma on stage. And if wamanat, kind of vibe. And so that's become a lot more of a body-centered experience, where I'm starting to listen to my body's knowledge, and that's coming on the page, and that's coming into the performer in ways that, because I was at a university, I was working at a university, you know, I was studying English literature from that Western perspective. And so my journey through poetry started from the page into the performer. Now we're moving from the body through the performer onto the page. And I'm super excited.
We are excited with you. I am so blessed to be drinking from this well. I'm not even done with this talk, but I'm loving this conversation. Okay, Miriam, I am curious to know about your experience in this space, in channeling or changing or shaping what you say according to what people say, or not, choosing not to, how that's received globally or where you are from. and what that's done in your evolution as a poet, as an artist. Yeah. If you could please unmute for me.
I always forget to.
That's it. It's not natural.
No, it's not natural. You're right. No, I completely agree with Siphokazi about caring less about what I'm writing or what I'm saying. No, when I was younger, I remember I was afraid, not only afraid from society or afraid from men, but also afraid to say something, for example, that can make my parents feel sad or embarrassed or anything. No? And through the years, I have learned to be to be honest and to be brave, no? About my writing. And after deciding being brave,